Another component is the endocrine cells of the pancreas. And you see these pink group of cells surrounding a blood vessel. That means whatever they can release gets released directly into the bloodstream. And that's where really the important endocrine part or function of the pancreas. The hormones made in the pancreas can be released directly into the bloodstream, and as such, they can reach any tissue where there is circulation. And it depends on whether the target tissue has the right receptors, the specific receptors for the hormones released. So if there's insulin released, insulin travels in the bloodstream, is going to find its receptor on the target tissue and initiate its cellular effects by binding to the receptor. So the endocrine pancreas is what we're going to talk about today, and specifically we're going to talk about the different type of cells. Really, these cells in the endocrine pancreas are generally a class of cells called the islets of Langerhans. Okay, and again, they surround, it's not shown here, but they surround usually a blood vessel, so they can, or more blood vessels, they can release their hormones directly into the bloodstream. There are 3 types of cells in the islets of Langerhans. The first one produces insulin, and these are the beta cells. And the second group of cells are the alpha cells that produce glucagon. And the third one is the delta cells that produce somatostatin. But for our purposes, our concern will be basically with the insulin production and glucagon production. Importantly, the pancreas is a post-mitotic organ. That means the cells do not divide. Okay? That means we are born with a finite number of cells as the islets of Langerhans. They may be like maybe 1 million or 2 million cells. They have to last us a lifetime. Okay? That's quite a bit. And that's the importance of the pancreas. It's going to produce these important hormones for a lifetime. Okay, so what's going to happen, let's say, after you have a meal? After you have a meal, the first thing that will arise, and this is really the glucose concentration in the bloodstream here, in milligrams per deciliter or 100 mils. After a meal, within a few minutes, really, after a meal, you start to see a rise in blood glucose. Parallel to that rise in blood glucose, you see an increase in insulin secretion. See how the profiles are almost identical. Insulin follows the rise of blood glucose. That insulin is secreted by none other than the pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas. So that means a rise in glucose elicits the release of insulin from the beta cells of the pancreas. Down here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but there's a transient increase in glucagon initially, and then its release is decreased. and that's because of the continuous rise of glucose. So glucose inhibits the release of glucagon as it continues to rise. However, there's an early transient release, and really that's more due to other things in the meal, typically certain amino acids. Okay, assume this pink or whatever purple fuchsia cell is the beta cell of the pancreas. Okay, this entire cell. This cell is going to sense the rise of glucose in the bloodstream. Remember, these guys surround blood vessels, the beta cells. They can sense the rise in glucose. As a matter of fact, they have a transporter here we talked about before, similar, identical to the one in the liver, the GLUT2 transporter. So they pick up glucose when glucose starts to rise in the bloodstream. When glucose is picked up into the beta cell, it is going to activate glycolysis. In fact, the pancreas also has the same isozyme that is present in the liver, glucokinase. So glucokinase gets activated, and the entire glycolytic pathway as a result is increased in the beta cells of the pancreas. And because of that, you have a rise of ATP produced from glycolysis. That ATP is able to inhibit a specific potassium channel in the plasma membrane of the beta cell, and resulting in the depolarization. It closes this channel, resulting in membrane depolarization. And as a consequence of that, you have an increased calcium entry into the beta cells. And calcium entry is needed. So calcium here rises inside the cytoplasm, and it promotes or activates the release of these vesicles containing insulin. Vesicles fuse with the membrane, releasing insulin into the bloodstream. So this is really an important concept. How the pancreas knows when to release insulin. It's due to a rise in glucose in the bloodstream, activation of glycolysis, inhibition of this potassium channel, increase in calcium entry, and the release of insulin secretion. Okay? That's the same thing, a little more detail, but the most important thing that happens is uptake of glucose, activation of glucokinase in the pancreas, and activating glycolysis. Glycolysis increases ATP, shuts down the potassium channel, causes the calcium to rise, which is necessary for the secretion of insulin from these vesicles.